All right, we're getting near the end of chapter 0. This is our 7th lesson. We are now going to be talking about fractions, and we're going to start with adding and subtracting. So first, let's do a little bit of vocab. A mixed number is a number made up of a fraction and a whole number. So you're probably already pretty familiar with that. Let's do some examples. My first example is 4 and 1/9. So there's my whole number, there's my fraction. That makes that a mixed number. Another example, let's do a -1, -2 and 2/3. Okay, so mixed numbers can also be negative. Nothing really changes. We'll do more negatives in chapter 3 and 4. Okay, non-examples. So a non-example would maybe just be just a fraction, like 1/5. Okay, so you're missing the whole number, so that means it's not a mixed number. Another non-example would be a decimal like 4.25, 4 and 25 hundredths. Okay, so we got some examples, we have some non-examples. Let's talk about our fraction rules for adding and subtracting. So first thing we want to do is we want to line up the problem vertically. Vertically, of course, means up and down. And we're going to do this to maintain place value and lining up the fraction place value with the whole number place value. And that's going to be very good for us if we ever have to do things like borrowing or if we have to regroup our answers, stuff like that. Second, we have to find a common denominator. We're going to try to find the LCD, but we will technically take any common denominator that we can find. So we prefer it to be the least common denominator, but if it's a common denominator, we'll be happy too. Okay, last two notes, you want to always simplify your final answer. Don't ask me, do I have to simplify this? The answer is yes. When we're dealing with fractions, I want an answer in simplified form. And don't forget to use units if we have a word problem. So if it's a word problem, don't just give me a number and tell me what the units of measurement are that go along with it. Okay, I've got two examples for you. We'll start with 6 and 5/8 plus 3 and 3/4. This is example number 1 from your notes. So you're going to notice that I have it written horizontally. Well, the first thing we want to do is change that and write everything vertically. So here is my 6 and 5/8 plus 3 and 3/4. So like I said to you, I really like doing it this way because then my fractions are lined up. There's my fraction place value, and my whole numbers are lined up. There's my whole number place value, and that is going to remind me of a bunch of things like, first of all, getting that common denominator. Easy common denominator here, by the way, we've got 8 and we have 4, so I can very easily turn a 4 into an 8 by multiplying by 2. So 6 and 5/8 stays exactly the same, 6 and 5/8. And 3 and 3/4 becomes 3 and 6/8. So remember, we did multiply by 2 in the denominator and the numerator in order to keep those fraction pieces equivalent. Okay, something 7th graders sometimes forget to do. Sometimes you forget to bring over your whole numbers. I would like you to rewrite the entire problem when you find that common denominator. Then we don't forget the whole number piece in our final answer. Okay, so adding these two mixed numbers, we get eighths and eighths. So my denominator in my sum is going to be eighths as well. 5 plus 6 is 11. Put the 11 in the numerator. Do not carry any ones. Do not try to regroup yet. We will regroup in our next step. Okay? It's okay that this is an improper fraction. It's okay that my numerator is greater than 10. I just want to add together those numerators to get my new numerator. Okay? And now we get 6 plus 3 is 9. Okay, so of course we're not happy with that. We're not happy with that as a final answer because we have to simplify our final answers, and we know we don't like an improper fraction as part of a mixed number. That just looks goofy. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 9 and I'm going to draw an arrow to it just to remind me that I have to bring that over into my final answer. Okay, that 9 is going to end up getting actually added into my final answer. And now I'm going to take and I'm going to drop that 11 into the house and do some division. Now I will not be putting a decimal here. If you put a decimal there, you're going to get a decimal answer. That's going to be a mistake. So no decimals. This is a really quick step just to get a remainder. So let's see. 8 goes into 11 one whole time. 1 times 8 is 8. Do some subtraction, and I get the remainder of 3. And now I stop. Do not add a 0. Do not add a decimal. I've done enough. I want a fraction answer. Okay, so I'm going to add that 9 to my whole number 1 here. 9 plus 1 is 10. Don't mind my crazy dog. Okay, 10 is now my whole number in my answer. And now this remainder here will be my numerator. And I keep that same 8 that I started out with. Okay, so 9 and 11/8 is equal to 10 and 3/8. Okay, you may need to watch that process again where we change an improper fraction into a mixed number. All right, you may need to do that. Just do the division. Do not add a 0. Whatever your remainder is becomes your numerator. Excuse me. And whatever your denominator was is the same denominator. Okay. All right, so final answer for that one is 10 and 3/8. I have one more problem for us to do. It is a subtraction problem. I hope you were expecting one. This is going to be a special subtraction problem you'll see. Maybe you've already picked up on that when you took a look at it. But I get 11 and 1/5 minus 5 and 12/15. Another pretty easy one here. The denominators turn into 15 will be my common denominator because I can very easily turn a 5 into a 15 by multiplying by 3. Okay, remember I multiply in the numerator and denominator to keep the fractions equivalent. So I bring everything over. I get 11 and 3/15 minus 5 and 12/15. And if you haven't picked up on that special thing that's going to happen, maybe you picked up on it right about now. All right, take a look at that problem. I want to start with my fraction subtraction here. And I want to take 3/15 and I want to subtract 12/15. And some of us might be looking at it thinking, oh boy, what do I do now? Okay, because I can't take 12 away from 3. Well, this is very, very easy. Don't worry about it. We're going to borrow. Just like we would borrow if this were whole numbers, just like we would borrow if this were decimals, we're going to do really quick borrowing here. Okay, so I'm going to borrow from that 1 in the 11, and that becomes a 0. And now 7th graders are tempted to put a little 1 in front of that in front of that 3 and turn it into a 13, but you can't do that, okay? Because we're borrowing one whole, but we have to add it in as a common fraction, okay, a like fraction. So my fraction is a 15 here, and what numerator would I need in order to make this equal to one whole? Well, it's going to have to be a 15. Okay, so I'm borrowing one whole from my whole number side. I have to add that one whole in as a common denominator fraction, right? So in this case, it was 15. If this were a 4, then this would be 4/4. If this were a 2, it would be 2/2. Okay, so that 15/15 is equal to one whole, and that gets me 18/15 when I add it in. And now I can go ahead and subtract. So I'm going to kind of subtract on a little bit of a weird angle here. But 18/15 minus 12/15 gets me 6/15. And 10 minus 5 is 5. Okay, that looks like it's almost done. It is almost done. We just have to finish off by simplifying our fraction. Both 6 and 15 can be divisible, or are divisible by 3. So I get 5 and 2/5. Okay, so some things to go over here. Again, first of all, remember when I borrowed from the 11, I borrowed from that whole number side. I borrowed one whole, but I had to add that in as a like fraction. So that's where this 15/15 came from. It's equal to one whole, but it's got the same denominator going on here. Okay, so when I added that in, I got 18/15, and then I could subtract. When you do your subtraction, don't forget to bring down your whole number, and when you do your simplifying, don't forget to bring your whole number into your final answer as well. Okay? Go ahead and rewatch this video. Take a look at some things. I'm going to give you a hint. I love to do subtraction problems like number 2. I like to do ones where you have to borrow because, again, I can see a lot of things going on in that problem. I can see that we know how to subtract. I can see that we know how to borrow and regroup and do all that good stuff. So do be prepared for problems like this on your upcoming quizzes and tests. Okay? Also be prepared for problems like number 1 where we get an improper fraction in our final answer and we have to change our improper fraction to a mixed number and regroup that into our final answer. Okay, so these are 2 great examples of problems that you will see on my tests and quizzes. All right, that's all for now. Go ahead and do your practice problems, and if you have any questions, ask me tomorrow in class.